Amara Queasy woke up that night with a strange feeling in her chest, like the air itself was warning her. At first she thought it was a bad dream. Then she smelled it, thick, bitter smoke crawling into her room. Her eyes flew open. The old mansion her grandmother had left her was no longer quiet. It was breathing fire. She jumped out of bed as heat slammed into her skin. Flames were already licking the curtains, climbing the walls like they had been waiting for this moment. The house groaned and cracked, wood snapping so loudly it sounded like screams. Amara wrapped a scarf around her face, coughing as smoke filled her lungs. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. Outside, neighbors ran into the street in their night clothes. Someone shouted her name. Someone else screamed for the fire trucks. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, then drowned by the roar of the fire. Windows shattered one by one, raining glass onto the ground. From the outside, the mansion looked like a giant torch. People watched in horror as the flames swallowed everything. They saw no movement, no shadow at the windows, no sign of life. Whispers spread fast. No one could survive that. Inside, Amara moved through smoke and darkness, her skin burning, her mind sharp and focused. Fear tried to freeze her, but she refused to let it win. As the roof began to collapse, the fire closed in behind her, and then she was gone. By morning, all that remained was ash, sirens, and one haunting belief shared by everyone standing there. Amara Queasy died in that fire. Or so they thought. Weeks before the fire, everything changed in a quiet lawyer's office that smelled like old paper and strong coffee. Amara sat with her hands folded in her lap, calm but nervous, while her family filled the room with fake smiles and impatient sighs. Everyone expected the will reading to be simple. They all believed the inheritance would be shared. No one imagined what was about to happen. When the lawyer cleared his throat and announced that Amara Queasy was the sole heir to her grandmother's estate, the room went completely silent. Not just money but everything: property, businesses, investments. Over $200 million. Amara felt dizzy. She hadn't asked for this. She hadn't even known how big the fortune was. Her grandmother had always been private, always watching, always testing. Nyasha's smile froze on her face. It was wide, polite, and perfectly placed, but it didn't reach her eyes. She clapped first, loud and dramatic, hugging Amara while whispering, "I'm so happy for you." But her arms were stiff, her breath was sharp. Inside her chest, something ugly had already started to grow. Victor Mensa didn't clap at all. He leaned back in his chair, jaw tight, eyes locked on Amara like she had stolen something from him personally. On the drive home, he didn't stop talking. "How does this make sense?" he asked Nyasha again and again. "You're the older sister. You sacrificed more. Why her?" His words sounded calm, but his voice carried poison. At family dinners after that, the air changed. Conversations stopped when Amara walked in. Compliments turned into jokes. Jokes turned into quiet insults. Victor began asking questions that didn't feel normal. How were the assets structured? Where were the documents kept? Who had access to the accounts? Amara answered politely, unaware that every word was being stored like ammunition. Behind closed doors, Victor fed Nyasha's jealousy. He told her the money should have been theirs. That Amara was weak, too quiet, too undeserving. "People like her don't know what to do with power," he said. "It will rot in her hands." Nyasha listened. At first she argued. Then she stayed silent. And finally she nodded. Amara noticed the stares. She noticed how Victor's eyes followed her, calculating, cold. She felt the shift in energy but never imagined hate could grow so fast inside blood. She still believed family was family. What she didn't know was that the inheritance didn't just reveal money. It revealed who they truly were. And from that moment on, the fire had already been lit, long before the flames ever touched the house. By sunrise the fire was out, but the damage was beyond repair. The mansion stood black and hollow, walls cracked, roof collapsed, the smell of smoke still heavy in the air. Firefighters moved slowly through the ruins, stepping over ash and broken memories. Then they found a body, burned so badly that no face, no fingerprints, No clear identity remained. All they could say was that it was a woman. The news spread fast. By noon, people were already saying Amara Kwesi was gone. Nyasha arrived at the scene dressed in black, even though no one had officially confirmed anything yet. She screamed when she saw the ruins, collapsing into the arms of strangers. Her tears were loud, dramatic, and endless. Cameras caught every moment. "My sister didn't deserve this," she sobbed. "She was so kind." People watching from their phones believed every word. Victor stood beside her, calm and steady, one hand on her back like a caring husband. He spoke to the police with controlled sadness, thanking the firefighters, praising their efforts. "We just want peace," he said. "This is a terrible loss for our family." No one noticed how quickly his eyes scanned the ruins, searching, confirming. A few days later, the official report was released. Due to the condition of the body, positive identification was impossible, but all evidence pointed to Amara. The house was locked from the inside. There were no signs of escape. The fire was declared a tragic accident. Her name was written on the death certificate. Amara Kwesi was officially dead. The funeral was held quickly. An empty casket sat at the front of the church. Nyasha cried again, louder than anyone else, holding on to Victor like she might fall apart without him. Victor gave a short speech about family, loss, and how life could change in one night. People nodded, wiping their eyes. No one questioned a thing. But beneath the ashes, beneath the lies, the truth was buried deeper. On the night of the fire, while flames chased her through the halls, Amara remembered something her grandmother had once shown her. A narrow door hidden behind a bookshelf. A servant tunnel built decades ago, used during colonial times, forgotten by everyone except one careful old woman. Her grandmother had smiled that day and said, "One day, this might save your life." Coughing, burned, half-blind from smoke, Amara pushed the shelf aside and crawled into darkness. The tunnel was tight, cold, and endless. Fire roared above her as the house collapsed, sealing the entrance behind her. By the time she reached the other end, she was bleeding, shaking, but alive. An old family lawyer, loyal to her grandmother, found her hours later and rushed her away before dawn. No hospitals, no names, no records. So while the world mourned Amara Kwesi, she was already disappearing from it. Her name erased. Her life paused. And the people who thought she was gone forever had no idea they were standing on borrowed time. Amara drifted in and out of consciousness as the small plane crossed the ocean. Every breath burned. Her skin ached, her ribs felt cracked, and her throat was raw from smoke. The man sitting beside her never left her side. Mr. Jabari Okonkwo, her grandmother's old lawyer, kept checking her pulse, whispering that she would be okay, that she was safe now. She didn't fully understand where they were going, only that she had to disappear. They brought her to a private clinic in Zanzibar, hidden behind tall gates and palm trees. No signs, no records. The doctors asked no questions. Her name was not written anywhere. To them, she was just a woman who needed saving. For days, Amara lay wrapped in bandages, drifting between pain and silence. The smell of antiseptic replaced the smell of smoke, but the memories followed her everywhere. When she could finally sit up, Jabari brought her a small phone. "You need to see this," he said gently. The screen lit up with news headlines from Ghana. Her heart dropped. Nyasha's face filled the screen, eyes red, voice shaking as she spoke to reporters. They called her the tragic sister who had lost everything in one night. Commentators praised her strength. Victor stood beside her in every clip, arm around her shoulders, described as the grieving brother-in-law who had stepped up to protect the family legacy. Amara stared, her hands trembling. These were the same people who had watched her burn. Each day the coverage continued. Interviews, candlelight vigils, sympathy posts flooding social media. People wrote long messages about how kind Nyasha was, how devoted Victor seemed. Amara felt something twist inside her that hurt more than her injuries. Not just betrayal, but the way lies were being loved by millions. At night, when the painkillers wore off, she cried silently. Not for the house. Not even for the burns. She cried for the sister she thought she had, and the life that was now being celebrated without her. Jabari sat with her through those nights, reminding her that staying alive was already a victory. As weeks passed, her body slowly healed. Her mind did not. She replayed old moments again and again, noticing the warning signs she had ignored. Victor's cold stares. Nyasha's forced smiles. Questions about money. It all made sense now, and the truth was heavy. One evening, as the call to prayer echoed faintly outside the clinic, Amara turned off the news. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark screen, scarred, changed, but breathing. In that moment, something inside her hardened. She was supposed to be dead. The world had already buried her. And as she sat there in the shadows, watching her enemies wear the masks of grief, Amara realized this silence was not weakness. It was protection. And one day it would become power. Amara thought the worst pain would always be the burns on her body. She was wrong. The real pain came quietly, weeks later, when the truth finally revealed itself. One afternoon in the clinic, Mr. Jabari placed a thin folder on her bed. His face looked older than before, heavier. "There's something you need to see," he said. Amara could tell this was not about healing or medicine. This was about the fire. Inside the folder were printouts, hard drives, and old notes from her grandmother's files. Her grandmother had trusted very few people, and Jabari was one of them. As Amara watched, he connected a laptop and opened a series of security backups that had been saved off-site years ago, hidden from the main system. Cameras Amara never even knew existed. The first video showed the back of the mansion the night before the fire. The timestamp made her stomach turn. Victor's car pulled into the driveway long after everyone was supposed to be asleep. He stepped out calmly, not rushed, not scared. He used a key. Amara felt cold. The next clip showed Victor in the basement, near the electrical panels. He wore gloves. He opened wires, adjusted switches, and used a small device to overload the system. He checked his watch, nodded to himself, and left like he had just finished an ordinary task. Amara couldn't breathe. Her hands shook so badly Jabari had to pause the video. But it didn't end there. Another clip appeared. This time it was earlier that evening. Nyasha was in the room. She stood near the stairs, watching Victor work. She didn't stop him. She didn't argue. At one point, she looked directly at the camera and turned away. That moment shattered something inside Amara. "She knew," Amara whispered. It wasn't a question. Jabari nodded slowly. He explained how her grandmother, sensing future danger, had ordered multiple hidden backups of the security system, stored with legal documents overseas. The fire destroyed the main system, but the truth had survived. Amara closed her eyes as memories rushed back. Nyasha's forced smile at the will reading, Victor's obsession with money, the cold distance that followed. It all lined up perfectly. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't fate. It was planned. Tears rolled down her face, but they were silent. The betrayal hurt deeper than the flames ever could. A stranger's cruelty would have been easier to accept. But this came from blood. From the sister who had shared her childhood, her secrets, her trust. That night, Amara lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The fire had taken her home. The truth took her innocence. But as the shock faded, something else rose in its place. Clarity. They had tried to erase her. They had failed. And now she had proof. Once the truth was clear, Amara understood one thing. She could never go back to being who she was. Amara Kwesi existed only on paper now, on a death certificate the world believed. And instead of fighting that lie, she decided to use it. With Mr. Jabari guiding every step, she began the slow, careful process of disappearing for real. New documents were prepared through legal channels her grandmother had set up long ago, just in case. New name, a new passport, a new face to the outside world. Nothing illegal, nothing rushed. Every move was clean, quiet, and untraceable. While she healed, Jabari helped her access accounts that had been protected by layers of security and silence. Offshore assets spread across different countries, locked behind codes only her grandmother and Jabari had known. Amara had never touched them before. Now she studied everything late into the night: contracts, investments, company structures. She wasn't reckless. She asked questions. She learned. Power, she realized, wasn't loud. It was patient. The inheritance was restructured under a private trust, sealed tight and controlled by rules that only she could trigger. No sudden withdrawals. No obvious moves. Just steady control. The money was no longer something others could chase. It was protected, hidden behind legal walls stronger than steel. Back in Ghana, Nyasha and Victor believed they were safe. The estate was frozen. The courts moved slowly. They assumed time was on their side. They didn't know that the woman they thought was gone was quietly signing documents from across the ocean, watching every move they made. Amara changed too. Not just her name but her posture, her voice, the way she listened. Pain had stripped away her softness, but it gave her focus. She trained her mind the same way she trained her body during recovery. Slow steps, no shortcuts. She learned to sit in silence without fear. Sometimes she looked at her old photos and felt a brief ache. That woman had believed love was enough to protect her. This new woman understood the world better. One evening, as the sun set over the Indian Ocean, Jabari handed her the final papers. Everything was complete. Legally, Amara Kwesi no longer existed. Her assets were secure. Her identity was sealed. Her enemies had nothing to trace. The world thought she had turned to ash in a tragic fire. Candles had burned for her. Tears had been shed. But the truth was simple and dangerous. She wasn't gone. She was free. And from the shadows, with nothing tying her to the past, Amara now held more control than she ever had in her life. Months passed, and life slowly returned to normal for everyone who believed Amara was dead. Nyasha and Victor moved through society like survivors of a tragedy. They were invited everywhere. People felt sorry for them. Their names appeared in charity events, interviews, and social pages. No one suspected a thing. Then came the invitation. A high-profile charity gala in Accra. Black tie. Big donors. Media everywhere. The event was funded by a new investor who wished to remain anonymous. That alone created excitement. People love mystery, especially when money is involved. Nyasha was proud to be invited. Victor was curious. Powerful investors meant opportunity. The night of the gala, the venue glowed with lights and luxury. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above well-dressed guests. Cameras flashed non-stop as important people arrived. Nyasha stepped out of the car wearing a confident smile, waving softly like someone used to sympathy. Victor adjusted his suit, calm and composed, already scanning the room. Inside, guests whispered about the anonymous sponsor. Some guessed it was a foreign billionaire. Others said old money. No one guessed the truth. The program moved smoothly. Speeches about helping the poor. Applause. Music. Then the host announced the final moment of the night. "Please welcome the woman who made all of this possible," he said. "Our generous investor." The lights dimmed. Soft footsteps echoed as someone walked onto the stage. The spotlight turned on slowly. Nyasha's smile faded. Victor's breath caught in his throat. The woman standing there was tall, calm, and steady. Her hair was styled differently. Her face carried faint scars, but her eyes were unmistakable. Dark, live, touching. Amara. For a second no one spoke. The room froze in confusion. Some guests leaned forward. Others frowned, trying to understand why this woman felt familiar. Nyasha's hands began to shake. Victor felt the blood drain from his face. Amara smiled, not wide, not dramatic, controlled, powerful. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight," she said, her voice steady and clear. "This cause means a great deal to me." Whispers spread like fire through the crowd. Phones were raised. Someone gasped. Someone else said her name out loud, unsure if it was even possible. Victor took a step back, his legs weak. His mind raced. Dead people don't stand on stages. Dead people don't look straight at you like this. Amara's eyes locked onto his for a brief moment. She didn't accuse. She didn't shout. She simply existed. And that was enough. Nyasha stood frozen, trapped between fear and disbelief. The tragedy they had performed for months was cracking apart in front of cameras, donors, and the entire city. The gala had been a trap, perfectly planned, public, inescapable. And as Amara stood there alive, calm and untouchable, one truth became clear to everyone watching. This story was far from over. Before Victor fully understood what his eyes were seeing, his body reacted to something deeper. It was the voice. Familiar. Unmistakable. The same voice he had heard in quiet rooms, in family arguments, in moments he believed were long buried. His heart slammed hard against his chest. "That can't be," he whispered. Amara continued speaking, thanking donors, praising the cause, her tone smooth and steady. Each word landed like a slow strike. Victor's breathing became uneven. His hands started to tremble. The room felt smaller, tighter, like the walls were closing in on him. Then the spotlight shifted, lighting her face clearly. The scars were there, faint but real. The eyes were sharper now, stronger. Alive. Victor's knees gave out. He collapsed right there on the polished floor, the sound of his body hitting the ground echoing through the silent hall. Gasps erupted. People rushed forward, thinking it was a medical emergency. Nyasha screamed his name, panic breaking through her carefully practiced image. Amara raised one hand. "Please," she said calmly. "Let him be." Her voice carried authority. The crowd froze. Screens around the hall suddenly came alive. A video began to play. Grainy security footage showed a familiar figure entering a mansion late at night. Victor. Wearing gloves. Moving with purpose. Wires. Electrical panels. Time stamps clear as daylight. Second video followed. Nyasha appeared on screen, standing nearby, watching, saying nothing. The room went dead silent. Amara spoke again, not louder, not faster. "This is the fire you called an accident," she said. "This is the night you tried to erase me." Documents flashed next. Signed reports. Backup security logs. Legal affidavits. Evidence stacked so neatly it left no space for denial. Victor lay on the floor, staring at the screens like he was watching his own funeral. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Sweat rolled down his face. The weight of the moment crushed him. Nyasha backed away slowly, shaking her head, whispering, "This isn't real." Amara stepped forward just once. "You thought I was ashes," she said quietly. "But ashes remember fire." No one clapped. No one spoke. Cameras kept recording, capturing every second. This wasn't drama. It was truth. Security entered the hall. Police followed. The sound of handcuffs broke the silence. Victor didn't look at Amara as they lifted him up. He couldn't. The power he thought he had was gone, stripped away in front of everyone he had tried to impress. Amara stood still, her hands relaxed at her sides. She didn't shout. She didn't celebrate. She let the silence do the work. And in that silence, everyone understood. This was not revenge. This was justice arriving on time. The room stayed quiet as police officers moved through the crowd with calm urgency. No shouting, no chaos, just the soft sound of shoes on marble and the low crackle of radios. Nyasha stood frozen as an officer gently took her arm. She tried to pull away at first, her face pale, eyes wide with fear. "This is a mistake," she said, her voice shaking. "You don't understand." But the evidence was already everywhere. On screens, in hands, in minds. Conspiracy. Planning. Silence when a life was in danger. The handcuffs clicked around her wrists. And the sound felt louder than any scream. Cameras captured it all. The tragic sister image shattered in seconds. Victor was lifted to his feet on the other side of the hall. His suit was wrinkled now, his confidence gone. Officers read the charges clearly so everyone could hear. Arson. Attempted murder. Each word landed like a final stamp on his life as he knew it. He didn't argue. He couldn't. His eyes stayed on the floor. Through it all, Amara stood still. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She didn't shout or point fingers. Her calm was heavier than anger. The crowd watched her closely, expecting rage, tears, something dramatic. But she gave them none of that. When an officer asked if she wanted to say anything, Amara stepped forward. The room leaned in. "You tried to erase me," she said, her voice steady and clear. "Instead, you exposed yourselves." That was all. No long speech. No insults. No revenge words. Just truth. Nyasha looked up at her then, eyes full of regret and fear. For the first time she saw her sister clearly. Not weak, not quiet, not someone to step over. But it was too late. Blood didn't protect betrayal. As they were led away, the crowd finally began to move, whispering in shock. Phones buzzed nonstop. Videos were already spreading online. Comment sections exploded with disbelief, anger and praise. People called Amara strong, untouchable, a woman who let the law speak for her. Outside the building, flashing lights painted the night red and blue. Nyasha and Victor were placed into separate cars. The doors closed. The engines started. And just like that, the story they had tried to control slipped completely out of their hands. Amara watched from the entrance, feeling the night air against her skin. She didn't feel victory. She felt release. The weight she had carried since the fire finally loosened. Justice hadn't needed her to scream. It only needed her to survive, stay silent and wait. And now, with the truth finally seen by everyone, Amara turned away from the noise, knowing one simple thing. Her life was finally her own again. Years after the fire, the mansion stood tall again, stronger and more beautiful than before. Its walls were polished, gardens in full bloom, and every corner carried the scent of careful restoration. Amara walked through the estate slowly, her steps quiet but confident. Each brick, each window reminded her of what she had lost, and what she had gained. She had not only rebuilt a home but a life. Using her inheritance wisely, she founded a charity for women betrayed by family, women whose trust had been stolen and voices silenced. The foundation offered legal support, counseling and safe spaces, everything she wished she had when she was burned, ignored and erased. Amara often sat in the office of the foundation, reviewing cases, meeting survivors, listening to stories that mirrored her own. And she never raised her voice. She had learned that power didn't need noise. It needed clarity, strategy and patience. The women she helped found strength in her calm presence. Standing at the balcony of her rebuilt estate one evening, she watched the sunset over Cape Coast. The sky glowed with orange and pink, like fire had left a promise rather than destruction. She thought of the sister and the husband who had tried to erase her, of the fire that had nearly ended everything, and of the quiet justice that followed. She spoke softly, more to herself than anyone else, words that would later echo online as she shared her story. They thought fire would end me. Fire introduced me. Amara smiled, feeling the weight of the past lift just a little. She had survived. She had grown stronger. And she had finally become untouchable. Not because of wealth, not because of revenge, but because she had claimed her life, her voice and her power on her own terms.